Kaer, there is something very important I need to ask you. Zhou Kaer looked at Zhang Yi in surprise, and when she saw that his expression was very serious, she realized that she was wrong. A hint of embarrassment flashed across her face. "What's the problem?" Zhang Yi said seriously. "It's about the incident before when I asked you to help me observe Yuan Kongye carefully. Did you notice anything wrong with Yuan Kongye in the church?" Zhou Kaer nodded. "There's nothing wrong. What's wrong?" Zhang Yi narrowed his eyes and recalled the incident that night when the zombie tide attacked. Everyone was too nervous that day, and their nerves were always tense. There was no time to think about other things. But now, when I think about it, there are many unreasonable things. For example, the ice attribute ability shown by Yuan Kongye. According to Zhang Yi's understanding, Yuan Kongye relied on two abilities as the leader of the snow worship cult. Blessing can condense ice spirits from her body to help others awaken their abilities or increase their ability strength. Gift can help people heal physical injuries. There are people who have both abilities at the same time, and both abilities tend to be amplification or auxiliary. Thinking about it this way, it's reasonable. But what about the ice attribute ability she showed that night? This is completely different from her blessing and gift. Zhang Yi had seen the power of Yuan Kongye's attack. She knocked away two powerful bronze-armored flying corpses in an instant. Her power must be very strong. But after that one blow, Zhang Yi later judged that her fighting ability would not be inferior to Xiao Honglian and Wading Hai. This question was what Zhang Yi didn't understand the most. Think carefully. When you were with Yuan Kongye, did you find anything abnormal about her? Especially when she was attacked that night, how did she fight? Zhou Kaer didn't know why Zhang Yi suddenly asked about Yuan Kongye. In her opinion, the snow worship cult was the biggest victim of this battle. Everyone sympathized with them and should not doubt them. But since Zhang Yi asked, she recalled it carefully. Well, she spent most of her time praying these days and comforting other believers. But if there is anything special, there was one time she said she could help me awaken my superpowers. A gleam of brilliance flashed in Zhang Yi's eyes. She said she would help you awaken your superpowers? Did you agree? Zhou Kaer smiled and shook her head. No, although I really want to become a mutant. But I remember your advice and keep vigilant of anyone, so I rejected her. Zhang Yi nodded with relief. If you are too nice to someone, you are either a traitor or a thief. Yuan Kongye can't be so kind as to give the precious ice soul to others. Unless she has some special purpose. Zhang Yi crossed his hands and propped up his chin. The fog in his mind began to become clearer. He vaguely felt that he seemed to have grasped the key to the matter. There was even a very bold idea that was slowly born in his mind. Kaer, keep talking. Tell me everything about her in detail. Don't leave anything out. Zhou Kaer nodded and continued. After I rejected her, she just said that if I changed my mind, I could go to her at any time. She didn't force me, which made me feel good. Later, it was the two monsters that broke through the ceiling and entered the church, Zhou Kaer recalled. I was sitting in the first row at the time, very close to Yuan Kongye, so I saw her attack very clearly. The two monsters swooped down and her first target was her. She was very fast, and she just raised her hand lightly, and the two monsters were frozen in mid-air. Then she waved her hand easily, just like chasing away mosquitoes, and the two monsters were swept away. Even the door of the church was broken, Zhou Kaer described vividly. As Zhang Yi listened, his scalp was numb, and even his back felt a chill. The ability of ice and snow can instantly freeze two powerful bronze-armored flying corpses. The reaction speed is extremely fast, and the physical strength is strong. This is the performance of a strengthening-type mutant. Doesn't it mean that she has at least 4 different abilities at the same time? Zhang Yi figured it out. He figured it out completely. He finally understood why the Snow Worship Church gave Ice Soul to him so easily. And it was generously sent to the hands of major forces in Tianhai City, even using the Great Decree to preach constantly, looking for people with potential and giving them the Ice Soul. As long as those with the potential for superpowers use the Ice Soul, it doesn't matter if they don't join the Snow Worship Sect or even become enemies of the Snow Worship Sect. because Yuan Kongye's real ability has never been a blessing. It's return from death. That is to say, once the mutant who has awakened the superpowers implanted with the Ice Soul dies, the ability will return to Yuan Kongye's body. In this way, she can have countless superpowers, and it seems that her superpowers are also very strong. During the Battle of the Five Armies, Zhang Yi found many empty-shell mutants without origins on the battlefield. At first, he didn't understand where the superpowers of those people went after they died. Now he understands that those people used the superpowers awakened by the Ice Soul, so their power also returned to Yuan Kongye's body. Then this kind of return can also enhance her own strength. And within a few months of the end of the world, she didn't know how many mutant superpowers she secretly absorbed. Not to mention that after several battles, countless mutants in Tianhai City were killed and injured. Suddenly, a bolder idea emerged in Zhang Yi's mind. Could it be that Yuan Kongye was the mastermind behind the zombie riot in Tianhai City? The more Zhang Yi thought about it, the more horrified he felt. If this was true, then the seemingly harmless and devout believer was actually the biggest and most inhumane demon in Tianhai City. And now, even Zhang Yi couldn't imagine how powerful she was. Zhang Yi's face was terribly solemn, and his legs began to tremble slightly involuntarily. This was a sign of nervousness, although these were only his imagination. But once this speculation comes true, it means that he will face an extremely terrifying demon in the near future. Fortunately, this is just a guess for the time being. At least there are some places where Zhang Yi can't justify himself. The first is the zombie tide. If the snow worship cult really has the ability to control so many zombies, then there is no need for them to be suppressed by several major base forces before. Relying on the power of the zombie tide, they can easily flatten Tianhai City. Secondly, it is the purpose of Yuan Kongye's doing this. As the leader of a sect, she regards herself as the most devout believer of God. What reason does she have to destroy the foundation of her sect? The death toll of the followers of the snow worship cult in these wars can only be described as tragic, and there are almost no left. Without believers, can her snow worship cult still be called a religion? I can't figure it out. I really can't figure it out. Zhang Yi was a little confused. He whispered with his eyes closed. Zhou Ke'er came over to comfort him and said, "Zhang Yi, what's wrong with you?" Zhang Yi didn't say anything. He fell into a long silence. That's right. All this was just his imagination. In addition to knowing that Yuan Kongye has many supernatural powers, he has no evidence to prove his guess. Even if he tells this matter, I'm afraid no one will believe it. What's more, he doesn't want to alert the enemy now. I hope I'm just overthinking it, Zhang Yi muttered to himself. After Zhang Yi and Zhou Ke'er finished chatting, they got off the car. He looked at the church with a very complicated mood. Am I overthinking it, or is it true? If the snow worship cult has the ability to control the tide of corpses, there is no need to wait until now to take action. Unless there is a special reason. However, if Yuan Kongye is really the mastermind, she could have taken advantage of everyone's weakness to kill everyone that night a few days ago. This seems a bit unreasonable, and looking at her, she doesn't look like she can control the tide of corpses. The more Zhang Yi thought about it, the more he felt that the logic of the matter was not smooth. No matter how you look at it, the snow worship cult does not have such conditions and reasons, and Zhang Yi's suspicion only came from the many supernatural powers she showed. I'd better investigate it secretly, Zhang Yi thought to himself. At this time, he heard the sound of Bian Junwu coughing not far away. Zhang Yi looked up and saw Wu Di, Bailey Changqing, and others looking at Bian Junwu nervously. He covered his mouth with a white handkerchief and coughed violently, as if he was going to cough out his lungs. Zhang Yi frowned slightly. Could it be because Yuan Kongye is afraid of the people in Jiangnan district? Zhang Yi felt that he was almost insane. He seemed to be a conspiracy theorist, always looking at everything around him with suspicion. Zhang Yi shook his head and threw aside the complicated thoughts in his mind. Then he walked towards Bian Junwu and others. The people in the investigation team had different expressions on their faces when they saw Zhang Yi. Most of them had a friendly look, because Bian Junwu once said that he intended to let Zhang Yi join their investigation team. So he has been looking for new members for the investigation team. although there is some overlap between sniping and Qiguangming, but it is not a big problem to have two snipers in a team, not to mention that their abilities in other aspects are also different. Only Wu Di always looked at Zhang Yi with some unkindness. Zhang Yi himself didn't know when he had offended Wu Di, but he didn't like to cause trouble, so he simply turned a blind eye. "Captain Bian, are you all right?" Zhang Yi came over and greeted Bian Junwu with a concerned look. Bian Junwu loosened his handkerchief, and Zhang Yi saw the dark red blood inside. He couldn't help but feel moved. Bian Junwu was indeed seriously ill. It seemed that he had used his ability again in the last decapitation operation, which caused his condition to worsen. Zhang Yi felt a little regretful. Bian Junwu left a good impression on him. He was a calm, wise leader, and extremely powerful. If it weren't for their help this time, Tianhai City would basically have no chance of solving the zombie crisis on its own. Bian Junwu said lightly, "As usual, I won't live for a few days." Although he was talking about his own life and death, his expression did not fluctuate at all, as if he had already seen through life and death. Wu Di said with a worried look on his face, "Boss, don't say that. Let's go back to Blizzard City quickly. If you go back for treatment, your injuries will stop getting worse." Bian Junwu shook his head. He knew his own body well. Although the region had used various means to protect him, a battle-hardened Delta-level mutant, mutation itself was irreversible. He had to bear the consequences of using his abilities. Bian Junwu said to Zhang Yi, "We will make a final conclusion and confirm that there is no corpse queen in Tianhai City, and then we will go back." He suddenly smiled and said, "How about it? Tianhai City is now in tatters. I'm afraid it will be difficult to deal with any natural or man-made disasters in the future. Do you want to consider going back with us? Not only you, but also your friends. Everyone around Zhang Yi is an elite. If they can go to Blizzard City, they can also find a job." Zhang Yi smiled faintly. "I don't have this plan yet, but I may go there in the future." Wu Di snorted coldly. "You are so picky. Do you really think that anyone who wants to go to Blizzard City can go?" Zhang Yi didn't argue with him, but just smiled and said, "I still have some friends here, and Tianhai City is my hometown. I'm used to it, so it's hard to leave." Bian Junwu didn't force it. "Think about this carefully. With your ability, you should have a bright future." Zhang Yi glanced at the others. Wu Di looked uneasy and always looked up at people. Zhang Yi didn't talk much. He told Bian Junwu to take care of himself and planned to leave. "Hey, Mr. Zhang, I heard that you are very good in Tianhai City. He is also one of the best masters. Do you want to spar with me?" Wu Di suddenly called Zhang Yi, staring at him with a provocative tone. Several members of the investigation team looked at him, some with playful expressions and some with deep thoughts. Bian Junwu said nothing. He just looked at Zhang Yi, wanting to see how Zhang Yi would respond. But Zhang Yi did not hesitate for a moment and raised his hands very generously. He smiled and said to Wu Di, "Brother, please spare me. I am not good at fighting. I can only shoot from behind and make it easier to carry supplies. You are the elite of Blizzard City. You are looking for me to fight. Isn't this bullying me? I admit defeat. Surrender." Although Zhang Yi didn't know where Wu Di's hostility towards him came from, he wouldn't fight a meaningless fight. Competitive people are most likely to die, and Zhang Yi knew this very well. It's just that when he agrees to fight with someone, it means he wants to kill the other person. But obviously Zhang Yi won't get any benefit from killing Wu Di, so he doesn't fight. Wu Di didn't expect Zhang Yi to be so cowardly and actually raised the white flag directly. He pointed at Zhang Yi angrily. "You didn't even fight. How can you admit defeat? You are the boss of a force in Tianhai City after all. Don't you have any face?" Zhang Yi smiled and waved his hand. "What boss? We are just a few friends who huddle together for warmth, and everyone gives me face and says a word to me. I have things to do. Let's talk later." After that, Zhang Yi left here quickly, not giving Wu Di a chance to find fault. Wu Di was shaking with anger, pointing at Zhang Yi's back, and said to Bian Junwu, "Boss, this guy is too cowardly. You plan to let him join us? Look at him from head to toe. Where is he suitable?" Bai Li Changqing beside him burst into laughter. Bian Junwu also smiled. He looked at Wu Di meaningfully and said, That's why I'm optimistic about him. If everyone in the investigation team is like you, it would be bad. Subscribe for more episodes.